Now we need to look a bit closely to qualitative data collection, because it's very different and very time intensive in terms of how we collect qualitative data. So whenever you want to adopt a qualitative research, keep in mind that the data collection takes a lot of toll, but it's in the end it's very rich if you can conduct it in a good way. As you might remember, qualitative research wants to gain detailed understanding about a central phenomenon. I keep coming back to this, but do not forget. Hence, the sampling approaches we learned in quantitative research differ when it comes to qualitative, goes without saying. Purposeful sampling. Now, this is that one sample type sampling strategy that is used in qualitative research. There are numerous classifications under this, but I will just overview. I will not go into the nitty-gritties. Purposeful sampling, qualitative sampling is best described through purposeful sampling. Key sampling? Purposeful sampling. Unlike in quantitative study where a representative sample was the goal to generalize from sample to population, in qualitative research the researcher intentionally selects individuals and sites that will provide useful information and help people learn about the central phenomenon. So purposeful sampling is purposefully selecting your population, purposefully selecting your sample. So for example, এমন হতে হবে এরকম না যে এটা রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ স্যাম্পল হতে হবে, এমন না যে আমরা যে কোয়ান্টিটেটিভ স্যাম্পলে যেরকম উই ফলোড সার্টেন স্যাম্পলিং স্ট্র্যাটেজিজ, in here purposeful sampling covers it all. So let us look into this. There are several types: maximal variation, extreme case sampling, typical sampling. The words are kind of self-explanatory, so I'm not going into that.
Frame is there?
Ma'am?
Purposeful sampling frame, can you call like this? Is there any frame?
Ma'am, frame as in?
Like the sampling will be based on purpose. You just make it that clear. That can be
purpose actually is based on convenience.
Convenience. That is frame. What is the frame of typical sampling?
Yes, ma'am. So purposeful sampling, anybody have you understood it, or can you volunteer to kind of summarize what purposeful sampling is for us? Anybody? Mashruk? Just try. What is purposeful sampling? You can read out, and then tell me your thoughts. The researcher intentionally selects the sample, right? So intentionally selects individuals and sites that will provide useful information. It's the researcher's view into sampling a population. It's not convenient sampling really, but rather it's the researcher going into the site and deciding, okay, so I want these people to be in my observation, I want these people to be in my focus group discussion.
Is it
so
typical sampling that I want this type of group, or typical?
Ma'am, a typical sampling would be if I decide that these people have that typical attributes of a certain population. Yes, ma'am. So that we can say if we take this typical sample, then it's typical of such population. Yes, ma'am. All right, moving on, everybody. So purposeful sampling, as I was saying, has many faces. Homogeneous sampling, critical sampling, opportunistic sampling, snowball sampling, conforming, disconforming sampling. I hope you will take these notes, or you can at least document it so you can go at home and look into the sampling strategies. Alright, so snowball sampling, in which the researcher, once the study begins, asks participants to recommend other individuals. Snowball is always that game, you know. Snowball means what?
One throws.
You make a ball of snow and then you just hit somebody with it, and then that person is tagged, right? Then that person has to hit somebody else, that person is tagged. So this is somewhat like that. Alright, so there is an activity. I think you can do it. If you want me to go back another slide, I can, but look into the activity. It will take only 30 seconds. Identify sampling strategy used in the following case.
Can we go to the previous slide?
Move. Sir, না স্যার এই যে স্যার 6টা জি স্যার ওকে স্যার I'll try my best sir.
It's typical sampling.
Why is it typical sampling?
Because ma'am, seniors are those who have done this, and now the juniors, the participants are also doing it. So they do have a same background.
Yes, so the seniors, the participants are there kintu. Participants, I have already got the participants. Who were the participants? I have already interviewed a few and I have asked them to recommend some other people who would be best suited for this. So recommending some other people
Means snowfalling.
snowfall or snowball? Snowball, right? Yes, snowball. So snowball sampling has been used here, and you know this is very typical of a qualitative research. Snowball sampling is very typical of a qualitative research. তোমরা যখন এটা কন্ডাক্ট করবে qualitative research কন্ডাক্ট করবে, snowball sampling is a safe space. Moving on, qualitative forms of data collection and protocols. So this is not much. This is just knowing what we already know. So forms of data collection in qualitative research means the interviews, observation charts, the documents that we use for our data, the audiovisual materials that we use for our data. Remember, in qualitative research, the data sets can be very versatile. It can be from images to sounds. It can be from documents to interviews. It can be a variety of data forms that we can use in qualitative. Hence, this is very tedious to analyze those data because it's always such variety that we find. As you know, qualitative data consists of answers to open-ended questions where the participants can be allowed to share their views, and that is why the qualitative sample size remains small, no matter which form of data collection has been used. So again we come back to the point যে qualitative analysis এ qualitative data qualitative research এ sample size কি থাকে small থাকে and open ended questions use করা হয় কেন small থাকে because if you take more than 10 people for an interview the data set would be so huge you won't be able to finish transcribing the data let alone go into analyzing. So that's something that you should probably save for your PhD. But in terms of data collecting, qualitative can become kind of tedious. The reason behind it is if you take larger sample used in qualitative, the data analysis documentation will be rigorous. Another reason is since qualitative research wants to enlighten the people on a topic, not generalize from sample to a population, the small sample size is sufficient. We know that in quantitative research, we try to generalize from the sample that we have to larger population. যে okay, so এই মানুষগুলো যেহেতু তারা representative, তারা এটা ভাবছে মানে নিশ্চয় বাকিরা যারা ক্লাস আছে তারাও এটা ভাবছে. That's quantitative research 101. But if qualitative research is something you're doing, then you don't necessarily want to generalize or come to that definite conclusion. You want to just improve the research on that topic, improve the understanding on that topic. Observation. So observation is something that you can do. আমরা করেছি না peer observation, classroom observation করেছি না. So there could be three-way observation. You do someone else's, someone else does yours, your observation, and vice versa. And so that's something we can use in qualitative data. Observation reports, field notes. Field note is something that we take in observational data. Will you keep this in mind? Field notes. When you observe a site or an individual or a group of people, you take field notes. That's called field notes, not just notes. Field notes. All right. তারপরে interviews and questionnaires. So interviews, questionnaires এখানে কি হয়? Usually we take audio tapes নিয়ে যাই আমরা যে আচ্ছা I will record you. Ma'am, can I please record you? or we take permission to take notes on what answers they give. In a focus group discussion, we usually keep a tape recorder so that we can later on transcribe what we heard and create a textual data or data text. All right, so documents we can use. Documents, as I was mentioning earlier, that literature review is not really at the beginning or the decisive part now of a qualitative research, but we can use documents that go a long way. Reports, journal reports, documents, other archives, archival reports, or library data, or we can also use, yes, or journals or that you keep, or tell your participants to keep a journal. For example, আমি তোমাদেরকে একটা portfolio বানাতে বলেছি না, that's your journal, and আমিও হয়তো একটা বানাচ্ছি, that's my journal. All right, ma'am, probably not.
There are some note-taking strategies and terms.
Okay. Okay, so now you know. Audiovisual materials can be data can be versatile, as I said. In qualitative data sets can be versatile. There can be videos, photographs, sounds, objects on social media contents. Even you can use memes in qualitative research. So that's something that's something interesting. All right, protocols is basically that form or checklist that you have in mind when you go into data collection. For example, you are doing an observation. এটা শুধুমাত্র observation and interviews এর ক্ষেত্রে ইউজ হয় protocol. So if you conduct an interview, you have a basic instruction for yourself যে আমি এখন এই জায়গায় আছি, আমার রিসার্চটা এটার উপরে, পার্টিসিপেন্টসদেরকে আমি এই রকমের প্রশ্ন জিজ্ঞেস করব, and I have some space left for me to take notes. That's your protocol. And in observation, if you create field notes, ওখানে এরকম কয়েকটা checklist টাইপের columns থাকে which you need to fill up. This is for your own direction. It's nothing much, nothing fancy. Activity. Look at the type of data হবে anyway given below and identify the form of data collection they will be used in. So নিচে কয়েকটা অপশনস আছে, কোন ফর্ম অফ ডেটা কালেকশন কোনটা আমাকে একটু বলো, কোনটা কোন ফর্ম অফ ডেটা কালেকশন? Transcriptions of open-ended questions, notes about documents, field notes and drawings, pictures, photographs, objects. Yes, very good. Field notes and drawings.
This comes under document. No, sorry.
I said field notes are what? Field notes are what? Okay, let us quickly go into the last slide. Field notes কোথায় ইউজ হয়? Observation. Notes about documents, very easy. Documents, right? Pictures, photographs, objects, audiovisual, transcriptions of open-ended questions, interviews, right? Interviews. All right, so do we get it? The examples. Okay, analyzing qualitative data. This is something I want you to really look closely on, because this is the last major part that I will cover. After that, you can probably skip the rest. So when we move on to finally analyzing the qualitative data, this is where things get real, because this is, where did it go? Now you have your qualitative data in the forms of audio, video clips, notes, answers to interview questions and audio visual elements. So you have all the things that you need. You have them in terms of, in the forms of recordings, right? You have recordings or field notes, or you have notes for yourself. Then in order to start working towards analyzing your qualitative data, you need to first transcribe your data. Write it down. Transcribing your data and make it into a text data. So no matter your field note, no matter your open-ended question answers, you need to take যা যা আছে কাশি দিলে সেটাও তোমার ট্রান্সক্রিপশনে থাকতে হবে. So all those things need to be included. Coding the data. Once you have your detailed transcriptions, যখন তোমার ট্রান্সক্রিপশনটা is in place, then you move on to coding the data. This is the first foremost step of qualitative data analysis, and you need to understand this. It is time to prepare data to code. Codes are labels that you have given your significant information that you identified in your data. You look at your transcription, you look at your research questions, you look at your literature review, and you think in terms of all that, what information out of this transcription really speaks to me, what information is the significant information that I need to jot down in order to get to data analysis, in order to prove my research questions, in order to prove my research, in order to solve my research problems, or in order to suggest solutions. So you can identify the significant information by looking at issues that repeatedly occur in your data. Write it down. You can do it by repeatedly looking at information that all the participants have in common that they are sharing, all the interviews have in common that they are sharing, and by looking at your research questions. So these two criteria you should follow in order to code your research, transcription. Coding the data is important in order to eliminate redundancy in the data and later on develop themes. Remember, systematic data reduction is the key to qualitative research. So qualitative research, we just want to eliminate redundancy, eliminate and make our data set as concise as possible. Since qualitative data sets are huge, this is why even after developing say 20 codes, the data would be too large to interpret and present as findings. And so after identifying supposedly 20 codes from your data, you will need to apply sorting strategies to look at individual characteristics of each code and look into their shared characteristics and group them in classes and reduce them further. So after you have developed your codes, you again go into to reduce them in numbers. So then again you look at their shared characteristics. এই যে 20টা কোড পেলাম এর মধ্যে তাদের মধ্যেও shared characteristics কি আছে, what are the overlapping themes, what are the overlapping categories that I find. Once you have located those, you then move into the next step of your analyzing the data, and you have now classes or categories which are ultimately your themes. Themes are where we work in qualitative data. Themes is where we actually get to analyze. So themes এ না আসা পর্যন্ত your data is basically raw data, and ওখান থেকে তুমি themes এ আসলে is when you start working in towards analyzing. Am I clear, everybody? Yes. All right, you can code your data manually or through softwares, but nothing really, if you use softwares that can only complement your manual coding. Nothing can really replace manual coding, because you need to do that coding পর্যন্ত তোমাকে আসতে হবে manually. So you need to get that into your mind. Or in vivo data, I think this is a very great software to use in terms of qualitative data analysis, so you can look it up. Presenting and reporting, this is my last slide. There are many strategies that you can apply to display the findings visually. So once you have the themes, now it's your turn to report the findings, analyze the findings, showing the findings using visuals. So you can use certain types of visuals. For example, creating a comparison table to compare groups of one of the themes. For example, তোমার যদি দুই ধরনের গ্রুপ থাকে, teachers and students, and they have both gave you statements about group work activity, then you can create a table, this side students, this side teachers, and you jot down their statements in terms of those thematical statements যেগুলো তুমি পেয়েছো to be overlapping, to be representative of all the data. So ওই statements গুলো you first identify and bring it on through a visual tool such as a table. Secondly, presenting figures with boxes to show connection among themes, or develop a tree diagram. A tree diagram always looks nice, cute, so you can use that for showing hierarchy or of themes from broad to narrow. It is just saying, developing a demographic table to provide personal and demographic information. For example, participants' demographic description, যেটা বললাম আমাদের personal information, or the views that they share, personal views about that central phenomenon, those are important and crucial to qualitative data. So having a table or a figure depicting that can tell a story. All right, when reporting the findings, you need to keep in mind that we are reporting themes. So you need to also keep in mind, what do people or what do the readers expect from a theme, or what kind of descriptions of a theme do the reader expect. You need to document, you need to say what the theme means, you need to say what it represents, and what evidence you have to support the theme. So in qualitative research, remember, you as a researcher use and rely a lot on your insight, on your own perspective, on your own reflections and views. So so the supporting and giving evidence for your themes that you located is very central to qualitative data analysis. So keep this in mind. Alright, so in qualitative research, narrative discussion is used. It is sort of a storytelling technique. So in qualitative research, you go on into discussion part by representing your data in a compelling way, in a way that kind of responds to your research questions, kind of brings in your research questions, brings in your literature review, brings in the themes and their main attributes or findings that you got in from your data. So ekhane bola ache je it's safe to go from answering your research questions to talking about your themes. So first of all, when you are analyzing, answer your research questions through your themes and then talk about your themes. So that way you can analyze in a systematic way. You should incorporate evidence in the form of quotations from interviews and observations to support the conclusions you have drawn. For example, now you're done describing everything. Now you want to just reflect on what you have so far gathered. So now you can incorporate quotations or to support your theme that you are describing as your finding. Okhane you can incorporate the participants' own quotes from their interview dite tara je kotha gulo boleche, you can use those you can pick certain quotations, certain sayings, certain statements that they said which really drives your point forward. So you can use that statement as evidence to support your theme when discussing the findings. Okay. Then it's pretty straightforward. You discuss the findings. Discussing the findings does not need to be directed. You already understand in a qualitative research, discussion or conclusion can be same thing, similar thing. So when you are wrapping up your qualitative research, you need to refer back to the research, the literature review, and then a review of your major findings and how the research questions were answered, personal reflection, insight, intuition of the researcher, eta ditei hobe. As a researcher, qualitative data, you are explaining, you are giving them insights into the qualitative data that you found, that you think will help. This is basically your reflection. So you need to really cross check whatever you're recommending, is it the right data? Do you have enough evidence to support your themes that you calculated and you kind of jotted down? So having those evidence is important in order to drive your point home, because otherwise qualitative research loses its credibility. The researcher suggests possible limitations and weaknesses. This goes for quantitative and qualitative. In the last point of your research, you have to talk about the limitations and recommendations. This can be in one paragraph. But you can use bullet points. So you can talk about what you have faced, what are the constraints that really hindered your research procedure. So that is something you end your research with. You can add a conclusion, you can skip the conclusion. Limitations and recommendations is something that you cannot skip though. So keep that.
Can be few paras also, depending
Yes,
on
ma'am.
the topic.
Sure, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so that is all from my side. I hope you took thorough notes. I really hope you learned something, and thank you for giving me this floor. Thank you, everybody.